So we have breaking news just moments ago. New inflation data just out, giving us another snapshot of how prices are trending, what direction they're headed for Americans. CNN's Matt Egan is with me now. Tell me what's coming in.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Kate, the snapshot is not a pretty one because we're back to 3% inflation in the United States for the first time since January. So these new numbers out show that prices were up by 0.3% between August and September. That's actually slightly better than expected.
Okay.
However, the annual inflation rate moved in the wrong direction from 2.9% to 3%. And as I mentioned, that is a new 8-month high for inflation. And when you look at the trend, what's important to remember is that inflation was going in the right direction, right? Earlier this year, back in April, inflation went down to 2.3%. That's the dip in the middle of that chart. So that goes back to September, back when then candidate Trump was on the campaign trail saying inflation was out of control. But you can see clearly we're in a worse spot now than we were last fall, when inflation was maybe the biggest issue, certainly the biggest economic issue on the minds of voters.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty telling. And when we dig into the categories to try to understand the why here, okay, gasoline prices did go up between August and September, right? So during the month of September, prices were up. In fact, gas prices increased by about 8% on a monthly basis. That was the biggest monthly increase in about 2 years. But this is not just about gas prices, which are, they're still relatively low, even if they went up. They're also, this is about the grocery store, which is another pain point for consumers, and which is also being driven in part by tariffs, because we did see significant increases for a number of different items. Canned vegetables, ham, other items of food went up. But then there's other tariff exposed items that have gotten more expensive. For example, apparel. Apparel went up by almost 1% on a monthly basis.
They warned this was coming. They warned that it was coming in the fall.
Because so much of the clothes they're imported, so they are exposed to those tariffs. Girls' apparel jumping by almost 4% on a monthly basis. And then two other things that are exposed to tariffs that I'll just call out. Appliances, they went up significantly by about 2%, and also some furniture increased significantly. And we know that furniture just got tariffed by the president. So look, you put it all together, inflation is not as bad as some had feared it could be, right? And it's certainly not the nightmare of 3.5 years ago, okay? But at the same time, as you know, inflation, it's cumulative. There's a snowballing effect. So the fact that we're getting uncomfortably high inflation right now, after years of very historically high inflation, that's why this is so painful. And look, it's contributing to the two-speed economy, right? People at the top who have money in the market, they own their homes, they're doing okay. They could absorb these price increases, but a lot of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, not so much, right? They're really the ones who are hurt here. So this is contributing to that K-shaped economy.
Yeah, this is not where any administration would want it to be at this moment.
Especially when the cost of living is just such a salient issue right now.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for bringing it to us. Sarah.
All right, let's talk about the government shutdown. It's second longest in U.S. history. And as it drags on, since we're talking about the economy, leaving hundreds of thousands of Americans without a paycheck, how are Americans feeling right now about the economy? CNN's Harry Enton is here now to run the numbers. A lot of talk about the economy. You just heard those numbers, that inflation going up, which is not what anyone wants to see. But you said you found something surprising about how Americans feel about the economy.
Yeah, quite surprising. Honestly, sometimes you look at the numbers and you just go, whoa, it kind of pops off the screen. This is going to be a contrarian take. What are we talking about? Well, Matt was mentioning about the econ playing such an important role in last year's presidential election. The top problem facing the U.S. is economic per Gallup. Last year, look at this, 43% at this time, 43% of Americans said the top problem was economic. Come to this side of the screen. It's just considerably different. We're talking about 24%. We're talking about a drop of near 20 points. And more than that, we're talking about across all of the different political groups, right? Democrats, independents, Republicans. We see that the percentage who say the top problem is economic has been falling through the floor. And more than that, we're talking about inflation. The percentage of Americans who say that the top problem is inflation has also been falling, which is, I think, very much surprising given all the news that we are hearing about the economy.
It really is surprising. How does this compare to the historical look at how people feel about the economy?
Okay, so let's talk about, we'll go through history, right? Let's take a look. The top problem facing the United States is economic. And the average midterm election, it's 35%. It's 35%. Look at where we are now. Again, it's 24%. It is lower. Fewer Americans right now are saying the top problem is economic than historically have said that the top problem is economic. So it's not only that the top problem being economic is lower than we were at this time last year, it is lower than we have historically been despite all the news about how the economy is supposedly softening. So you just look at these numbers and you just go to yourself, wait a minute, there's something going on here with the American public whereby you're getting all this economic news, but yet the percentage of Americans who say the top problem is economic has actually been falling and is lower than it normally is.
It's fascinating. All right. How are people feeling about the shutdown vis-a-vis whether that's having an impact on the economy?
You know, the story of this segment has essentially been that fewer people are saying that the economy is a top problem than historically were a year ago. And so perhaps not surprisingly, we'll end on this note. Harm shutdown is having on the economy a great deal or quite a bit. Back in 2013, the last time we had this measure during a shutdown, it was 65%. You come over to this side of the screen, again, it's significantly lower. It's 48%. It's less than a majority. So what we're talking about here is, again, fewer Americans are saying the top problem is economic compared to last year and historically. And what we're seeing is fewer Americans are saying that the shutdown is causing a great deal or quite a bit of harm to the economy. So at this particular point, yes, it is true that perhaps Americans don't like the direction that the economy is going, but where it ranks on their list of issues has actually been falling.
This is fascinating. Thank you so much, Harry.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.